Hello, I'm coming to you on the 10th of October 2022, and just a update on the Ukraine war. As you know, Russia retaliated against Ukraine with at least 75 missile strikes throughout the country, from Kyiv down to Kharkiv to Zaporizhia. They've targeted as emblematic of the Russian military, civilian infrastructure and civilian targets. Um, and this is in retaliation for the damage done to the Kerch Bridge in Crimea, which, by the way, the Russians targeted civilian infrastructures and civilian targets during rush hour. The attack on the Crimean Bridge, the Kerch Bridge, took place in the early morning before there was any traffic. It did target the railway part of that bridge, but it was timed seemingly to minimize civilian casualties. Again, it is the difference between the Ukrainians and the Russians is that the Russians continually target civilian infrastructure and civilian targets. The Ukrainians target militarily important targets, militarily legitimate targets, like the bridge, which is the basic route of supply for Russian military hardware. Um, they've also named the new military overall commander for the Ukrainian theater, and that is Sergei Surovikin. This is another butcher of Syria, and I asked myself, are there any Russian commanders who are not the butchers of Syria? And it doesn't seem to be so. They seem to all be butchers of Syria. Um, he was responsible for the bombing of Aleppo, the carpet bombing of Aleppo, so he is also a butcher. He's also remarkably, he's been in prison twice. He's been found guilty and sentenced for arms trafficking, but he's been somehow rehabilitated, and now he's the overall commander of the Russian forces in Ukraine. I don't think his presence on the battlefield will significantly alter the outcome of the war. I think Ukraine's victory is irreversible for a variety of reasons, which I've discussed numerous times on these video updates. The partial mobilization, if you can call it partial mobilization, is likely to extend the war and to cause many more casualties and just increase the overall tragedy of the situation. But it will not reverse the ultimate outcome, in my view. In addition to that, the battlefield seems to be going well for the Ukrainians. They seem to be making steady progress. They seem to have taken an operational pause. There's been some rain in during the fall. The Ukraine tends to be very rainy, and as it gets increasingly colder and winter is coming, so that the undersupplied, poorly supplied, and untrained conscripts that are coming from Russia are likely to suffer significantly during the winter season. But the Ukrainians have done very well in not outrunning their logistics, their supply base, unlike the Russians, who continually do that and therefore have very little capacity to generate combat power for a very long time. The Ukrainians have done a very good job at maintaining logistical support for their troops, which is encouraging, and another reason why the Ukrainians, in my view, will ultimately win. I think Omar Bradley said amateurs discuss tactics, professionals look at logistics. And I think that is very true. Whoever has the better logistics system will win this war. And so far, the Ukrainians are much better at logistics than the Russians, who are continually incompetent and just remarkably incompetent in maintaining logistical support for their forces. I'd like to talk a little bit about the nuclear war option. In my opinion, I don't think Putin will ever launch a nuclear strike. There are two reasons why I don't think it will happen. I think the most important of these is that the United States and NATO allies will have to respond in a devastating attack on conventional forces within Ukraine against Russian conventional forces within Ukraine, which does not escalate the war, but it eventually, I mean, it completely decides that Russia's ultimate defeat, since the United States and NATO can destroy every single military asset that the Russians have, both in Ukraine and in the Black Sea. And this would not take much. The Russians, the Russian conventional forces have proven to be a paper tiger. And that is without a doubt the singular lesson to be learned from this conflict. So I think that would definitely deter Putin from pushing the nuclear button. In addition to that, I think it's patently clear that Xi Jinping in Beijing and Narendra Modi in Delhi in India have both warned him against extending that war to that level. I think China would completely abandon Russia. And interestingly enough, there was a report that Xi Jinping did not congratulate Putin on his 70th birthday, while he did congratulate the president of Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan, one of those, a few days before. There's a obvious distancing of China from the Russian war, and this bodes well because both China and India have publicly expressed displeasure with the war. And I think Putin would be completely isolated if he lost the somewhat tepid support of those nations. In addition to that, I think Putin is a third reason is that Putin is having some opposition emerge within the Kremlin. There are reports that Sergei Shoigu and Valery Gerasimov are being removed from their positions. These are unconfirmed reports, but it does speak to the level of tension in the Kremlin. Shoigu is a Putin ally, and if he were to be demoted, it would, I think, signal a loss of control by Putin. I do believe Putin will be removed from power within a year and a half. The Russians are not. One thing that saves Putin is that there is no collegial leadership in Russia today. Putin has a personalist hold on power, autocratic hold on power, without the Central Committee and the Politburo that basically governed the Soviet Union. If there were a Politburo or a Central Committee that is a collegial leadership in Russia, Putin would have been ousted already. So that his personalist hold on power has saved him, because as the battlefield defeats emerge, his position has grown weaker, no doubt. Autocrats cannot lose battles because losing on the battlefield eventually translates into losing overall power. Putin doesn't have the kind of traditional legitimacy that the czars had, for example, where they had a traditionalist hold on power. Eugene Weber, the great German sociologist of the late 19th century, early 20th, basically characterized power as having three types, typology of power, having tripartite division. One is charismatic power, and the other one is traditional power, and the other one is legal power. Putin's hold on the Russian government can best be seen as charismatic power, without the kind of traditionalist legitimacy that a czar's family would have. Uh, so that even though Putin has tried to use the great Russian ideological formulation of the 19th century, that is autocracy, orthodoxy, and nationality, developed in 1833 and then kind of used by the czars until the removal of Nicholas II in the disaster of World War One. But this is very much looking like either the Crimean War or the World War One, where the Russian military effort is going disastrously bad, and eventually, I think it will translate into Putin's ultimate removal from power. There are some signs that that's maybe taking place already, that there are some beginnings of rumblings in that. And I think at the end, because Ukraine will win, Putin will be removed from power. Thank you very much.